Hi everyone, in this video tutorial I'll be showing you how to use Photoshop to save out your images for the web. And also I'm gonna go over the different compression methods that you could use. Again, we use Photoshop to design our web pages because Dreamweaver is really not a design program. It's kind of publication for the web. Basically, we use it for to publish content to the web. However, we use Photoshop to do mockups, and of course we use Illustrator to create logos and vector, any type of vector art that we're going to be using. So the only thing from this page that I'm going to be using when I'm starting to create my content on the web is the images and anything that's vector based. For example, this logo here. The navigation we're going to rebuild in HTML, and also the text we're going to build in HTML. And I'm going to go over why we do that in other videos. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is a slicing demo folder here. And of course you want to make sure once you start working on a project to name them appropriately. So we go for slicing exercise, and I'm gonna just keep things very organized. I'm gonna make a new folder, Command Option N or Control Option or Control Option N on PC, and just do PSD, just so that it just makes life a lot easier. You know exactly where things are located. The first thing we want to do, we want to make sure our rulers are visible. So Command R or Control R to on a PC to see your rulers, and can also do View. You want to also make sure your grid is visible under View Show. And I've already typed these, basically the nav. Again, this is just for my own personal reference, because like I said, we're going to rebuild that in Photoshop, in HTML later. So the alignment tool is really important, and organizing of your files are also really important. So I'm going to go ahead and actually move this up here. So I've already have the content of my logo in a folder here, and I'm going to go ahead and actually put the two images that I have also in a folder. If you click the layer and hold the Shift key and click the second layer, you can choose Command G or Control G on a PC to put it in a new folder, and I'm going to double click and just call it Photos. Just makes life a lot easier. We also want to make sure that the alignments are correct. That's why we have the grid. So if I move the nav, make sure you see here, come back to my nav, click off auto select here under the layer so you can move things around a little easier, and you can align to the center of your logo or align to the bottom of your logo. But right now, like I said, we're going to rebuild that part later. So one of the most important features in any of the Adobe programs is the option of working with different workspaces. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually turn off all the extras and grid, and you can use Control H or Command H on Mac or Control H on a PC to hide and show your extras. I'm going to show you the ruler, make sure the ruler is still available to me. And like I was saying, one of the most important features in all the Adobe program is having access to different type of workspaces. So I'm gonna go ahead and come back here. So if you go to Window, Workspace, you'll see that by default we're usually set to Essentials, and if you're working for when you're preparing content for the web, you want to make sure you change it to Graphics and Web. When you do that, by default the measurement units is going to change to pixel, and you're going to have access to the crop tool, which is hiding in the below the cropping option. So if you look at if you click on the crop tool, you see you get the drop down, and you have a slicing tool and a slicing selection tool. These are the two tools we need in order to save out our images in our page. So based on the layout that I have here, which is a very basic one, I know that I'm going to be the only thing I'm going to need from this page is saving out the images, as well as saving the logo. So I'm going to go ahead and actually grab my ruler. I'm going to bring out the Command H or Control H to show the other elements on my page. So I'm gonna actually get rid of these. You can just, these are my rulers, I can just drag them off the page. So I know for a fact that I need to save out the images, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring this down here, bring this down here, and make sure I have a folder week 4, and I'm gonna go ahead and choose from top here. I'm gonna go ahead and click on my crop tool and choose the slicing tool, and as soon as you do that, you see that because I have dragged these guides, I'm gonna go ahead and choose slices from guides. Again, you need to be in the slice tool, not the slice selection tool. You need to be here, and this is hiding under the crop tool, so it's the middle icon. Once you click that, you'll see that each one of these sections is going to be saving out as an image. Well, as I mentioned, I know I'm going to rebuild this part in HTML, and I'm going to rebuild my nav in HTML. So I'm going to save out my images. So I could have two. Right now I just have 2 pictures, but I could have 100 photos. And this slice basically means that it's going to cut this, whatever is within this slice that's called 2 is going to be saved out as its own individual picture. So I'm going to go ahead and choose File, Export, Save for the Web, which takes me to this panel here. I'm going to choose Original, and I'm going to choose Fit in View, so everything fits here. And as you could see, when I click on each one of these slices, basically it's going to get highlighted. So for the purpose of, so right now I just have these 2 pictures. I'm actually gonna go ahead and click on the photo. Remember, from everything here, I only need the pictures that I have in slice number 2 and the logo. Everything else I'm going to rebuild in HTML. However, I'm going to be showing you different compressions for each of these elements on the page. So again, we compress our files for to be delivered quicker on the web. So for example, if you have a file that is for print, usually they're very large in size because you want to make sure that the quality of the print is acceptable, but the delivery on the web is completely different. So some of the basic compression methods are JPEG, which is generally used for photographs, GIF, which is generally used for vector graphics, and PNG 8 or 24, which is used for photographs and vector graphics. PNG 24 produces larger file size, but it also gives you transparent background, so it preserves transparency. So let's say if I want to have this logo, but I don't want this white background, I could just save it out by itself without that white background, and it's going to preserve that. So right now we're just going to be concentrating on images. So the slice is kind of like the container. Like each one of these slices, we want to think about it as, you know, reusable containers, which means that I can reuse them for different types of food, but as long as I change the name of my file. So for example, so right now I'm going to make sure this is on JPEG. I'm going to, generally speaking, you want to make sure the quality of your photograph is high, and you can kind of see it says at the bottom that this file is 481 kilobytes. It's going to take 88 seconds on 56.6 modem, which is really slow. But right now anything around like 200 or 300 is acceptable. Actually this is fine too. 400 is acceptable too. So but what you could do, you could just click on the 2 up part, and you can choose different compressions for each of those parts. So this is the original. It says the original was 70. Wow, it's a very large file, 70 megabytes. And then this one, let's see something here. So I'm going to just choose my image size. It's because of these width and height. So before we move any further, I'm going to go ahead and actually change my document size here. So I don't need a 300 resolution, so I'm going to go ahead and change that to 72 dpi, and I'm going to click back my resolution and change that to pixels, and I'm going to make the width about 1200. Oops. And so this is pretty standard, 1200 wide, and again the height is flexible, so you can kind of modify it, because remember, the only thing I need from this file is these photographs. And if you have like templates where you're using bigger pictures, you can sort of use like a, you know, wider width. So because for now I'm just going to leave it at 1200. So this is how you can actually resize, and if you can, because I changed the resolution from 300 to 72, now my file size is only 3 megabytes. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. I'm pressing letter F to fill the screen again. So I'm going to go back to that same window. So we're going to choose export, save for the web, and now you could see that my file size is much smaller. So this is if you were working with websites or content that was basically really, you know, had to compress them very small. So you'd be using these options to compare and contrast and assign different compressions for each of the versions of the photo. But for what we're doing here, we don't really need to do that. I'm just going to go back to the original, and once again, if I click on the photo, I'm gonna change the quality actually from JPEG. We're gonna just choose high, and it just gives me the option. It says this file is gonna be 52 kilobytes and 10 seconds, but again, this is very slow modem that it's using. So so going back here, so this is a really small size. I'm going to go ahead and double click on the layer. We already named it dog1, save it, and I'm going to make sure it's going to the right place. And I'm going to come back here, and you see the program automatically created an images folder for me. And not only it saved my picture, but it also saved the other two slices. The reason it did that is because when I said file export, say for the web, I had 3 slices here, and here the format was images only, and I chose basically all slices. I told it to save all the slices here, which that's what prompted the program to save like the top slice and the bottom slice. So you don't really need to do that, just because, like I said, we are going to rebuild this page, this part, the top part and the bottom part in HTML. But I wanted to go through this exercise to show you how you can, if you don't change those settings, every single slice on your page is going to be saved, and you can just throw them away. I mean, it's not a big deal because you're not going to really be using them. Another thing that I wanted to show you, if you choose the same option, export, say for the web, and if I click save, from here, if I choose HTML and images, all slices, I will also get, and it's just going to ask me to replace because I already saved those photos. You could see that it also gives me an HTML page based on the photos that I had. So I'm previewing it in Chrome. So I can add interactivity with this, but if you, let's say, you wanted to see what it's going to look like on a web page, you can just simply use that option to save your file as an HTML file. I'm going to go ahead and actually delete that because I don't really need it. So this would be just for your own personal reference. So what I do need, however, is to pick the other photos that I have here. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose file. Again, you can rename the slice a couple of different ways. You can choose the slice selection tool, and remember, you make the slice only once with this tool. Once you have it, you just make sure you change your tool. The selection tool has a little arrow on top of it, and that's where you can rename your slice and so on. So this one, you want to ignore all these other options. In the old days, you could actually create an entire website in Photoshop, but we can no longer do that. But from this window, the only thing that I need to change is the name of my file, my slice, because remember, I already have a dog 01 that looks like this. So if I were to save this one as dog 01, is going to replace my other correct slice. So I'm going to change it to dog 02. I can also change it here if I wanted to export, say for the web. And remember, I changed it over there, but if I didn't change it in that other window, I could change it here. And again, I'm going to keep the compression the same. I'm going to go ahead and say save. And here I want to make sure it says images only, and I want to make sure it says selected slices, which means that don't keep giving me all the other slices. I just want this one slice. So this is basically where you can make those selections. And generally speaking, we don't really need the HTML page unless you want to just see what your page looks like. And I'm going to come back here, and you see that my dog 2 is now saved as its own individual picture. And I noticed a little gap here, so you can always go back and reassign, basically resize. So if I just open this up, I can see that my guide kind of overlaps, so I can just move this back up so that it's, I'm gonna get rid of these guides. If you do that, you probably want to reslice the picture again, because remember the old slice had the white gap, and this one I just redid it, so you want to make sure that it saves as the new one. So if I do now, this one doesn't have the gap, and this one also, so both of these are going to be neo because I just changed the position of the slice. And you can kind of see the border of the slice, which is kind of yellow. So now if I just go to File, Export for the web, double click, and I'm going to say Dog2 revised. Okay, and then save, and ignore that name, because that name that we just saw, it's based on the Photoshop file, so it doesn't really, it's not going to affect the picture. So again, we'll just do export, set for the web, double click, I'm going to say Dog1. I just swap the names, and I'm going to say okay, save, and save. So now if I come back here, open up my images, you see that my Dog1 doesn't have that border anymore, and of course I swapped the name, so it's vice versa. And my Dog2 also doesn't have that border anymore. And then let's say you want to add another picture. Let's say you want to add this picture, and they're just all adorable. Let's say this one. I'm gonna say three. Make sure I just bring it in to my Photoshop. And now I can simply move it to where I want, but I know the picture is a lot bigger. I can try to size it, but let's say this is, you know, what I want to have. So it's already in the correct place. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make a mask on my folder, which means that I'm gonna click the letter M and drag over the guidelines that I have here, and I'm simply gonna make a mask. So now you can see that basically anything that I put in this folder is going to crop it based on this mask. So I'm gonna have to actually, so the mask is you know, I don't want to have to resize everything. So let's say if you want to extend your mask vertically so that it matches the slice that I've created, you want to unlock this, click on your mask, choose Control T or Command T on a Mac or Control T on a PC, and simply drag the mask down. Make sure this is highlighted. You want to lock this back up again. And again, I just want to reiterate that it's very important that if you're in this class, you need to know the basics of Photoshop, which includes masking and layers and so on. So now I just added another image here, and again, you can add as many pictures as you wish. And I'm going to go back and save again, export this out. And this one's gonna be, I'm just gonna do Dog3, and I'm gonna say okay, and I'm going to say save. So this is how you can add multiple pictures, and like I said, you don't have to worry about this. You can even get rid of these the name, make it shorter if you wish. It doesn't affect the pictures. So once you do that, I'm gonna go ahead and open up my folder, and I know the pictures that I want has the revised at the end of it, so I'm gonna delete like those other photos that are incorrect. And I can even go ahead and revise the name, and you can change these names before you move into the HTML program. Once you're in the HTML program, you can change the names, or you can't do that anymore. So I have my 3 dog pictures. So now I'm gonna go, so basically you want to make sure you save out all your pictures, and make sure that if they're going to be in a slider that we're going to add soon, like eventually, you want to make sure that they're the same size. So I'm going to go ahead and now save out this logo. So for the logo, I don't want this white background, and I just want this I don't want the nav either, because like I said, I'm going to rebuild that in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and drag my vertical ruler. And again, remember that you want to save out all your images first, and then you want to go ahead and do your logo. And I'm going to just make it kind of small like that. So I'm going to go ahead and say select from guides, and now I'm going to change this to slide selection tool. This is the only slice that I want, this one. I don't want anything else on this page. So I'm going to go ahead and save, export, save for the web, double click this, and this is the white is showing up because this is set to JPEG. I'm going to go ahead and change it to PNG24, and you can kind of see that it gets rid of the background. So this would be great for any Illustrator file that you have, and you want to make sure you turn off the background of your PSD file. Like you see, it's white here. I turned it off. That's why you see the transparency here. And I'm going to go ahead and PNG24. Everything looks really good, and I'm gonna go ahead and save. Actually, I think I need to name it. If you don't name it, it's just gonna name it based on the slices. I'm gonna change this logo, and I'm gonna go ahead and save. Make sure you have the transparency option checked in. Make sure it's going to the right place. And now if I open this up, you could see that my logo is completely transparent. So and if you need to get rid of slices, you can simply let me just go back to you can actually, if let's say because if I save this out, each one of these is going to be saved as a separate picture, which is something that you don't want. So so that's why it's really important to save out all your pictures first, and then save out like whatever it is that you want to anything with transparency and so on. And so that is how you save out your pictures and Illustrator files in Photoshop using the slicing tool and using the export legacy tool.